Hey everybody, man, my name is Brian Day, and I am here with Jeremy Abrams, and we're going to be doing a podcast for you guys here. We did a little trial run of this, and hopefully we didn't make too big a mess of that. Nobody saw it but us, thankfully. Uh, Jeremy and I have been in the radio business off and on for a while together. We did some live broadcasts, some sports talk show, that kind of stuff. So now we've decided to bring you our perfect opinions of all things sports live here on BNC Sports Cards channel. Thank you guys for joining. If you have any comments or emails you want to send to us, you can shoot them to us at BNC Sports Card Factory at gmail.com. We might reply, we might not, we might block you. Who knows? It depends on the frame of mind, really. How you doing today, James?
Well, don't let Brian get that crazy on you yet, guys. We love to have you here with us. I'm Jeremy. He's Brian, and all we want to do is talk about some sports. We'll probably debate some stuff that we agree on. There's going to be stuff we don't agree on, and let's just get into it, Brian. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you, my friend, and this ought to be fun. You know, it was funny when we did all those years of radio, and you know what I realized more than anything right now? You really have a face for radio, man. I mean, you really do. It's
That's not even cool. Not even close to cool. Like, if you jump into something as friends, see the quotes, friends, and then you start off like that. That's not okay. So
Yeah, you know what? I suspect that you're going to get over. But seriously, guys, thanks for joining us. We're going to say some stuff you like. We're going to say some stuff you don't like. We're going to say some stuff that hopefully makes you think a little bit about the world of sports. And we're going to look at it from the world of this of sport and nerddom, which I think Jeremy and I would agree even with this that we both
we did.
really look at every day. That's what you call dead air, my friend. That's a broadcaster's nightmare. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I heard it. I heard it and didn't hear it.
Yeah,
No,
on the
I think Brian's making a great point. I mean, we will talk about everything. We're talking, from middle school football to the professional, anything. That's what we're going to talk about. And I can't wait to jump into this. I don't know about you, Brian.
I'm excited. And you know what, Jeremy? Let's just open up with a tough topic, man. One thing we've
Very
always
good.
prided ourselves on is not being afraid of tackling the real issues. And I think one of the real issues this past week has been the Ray Rice situation with the 2-game suspension up in Baltimore. For those of you that haven't heard, that have been living under a rock for the past couple of 3 days, the now infamous video of Ray Rice dragging his I guess you could say, fiance at the time, wife now, out of the elevator in Atlantic City or Vegas. I forget where they were at now. Dragging her unconscious body out, and reports were that she was unconscious because he had rendered her unconscious, allegedly. And Commissioner Goodell stepped out yesterday and made the staggering, or 2 days ago, earlier this week, and made the staggering suspension of a whopping 2 days or 2 games. A 2-game suspension for Ray Rice for what is being charged with as basically domestic violence, assault and battery. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that I know what I saw in that tape. Jeremy, any initial thoughts on not just what Ray Rice is accused of and apparently did, or more so than that? I think the real topic here is Roger Goodell's action or lack thereof in the suspension.
I'm glad you asked because I've got a lot of thoughts. All right, I've seen the video that's gone viral, basically, like the video that's gone to TMZ and every news network there is. I've seen it. It doesn't show anything. All right, and like I am kind of flip flopping on this issue right now because, all right, yes, it shows his fiance knocked out or
Unconscious. Let's just say
unconscious. I mean,
unconscious.
something, and then him grabbing her with someone else walking up. We have no idea. Uh, we know that he made a statement that he said that he was defending himself, but we have no idea. So my main point is we have no idea. We have no idea what happened, and that's the only reason that I can defend Commissioner Goodell with a 2-game suspension. However, if they're looking at it, the league is looking at it that it was a domestic assault that he basically, what everyone thinks, he knocked her out while they were in the elevator, whether he was defending himself or not. He knocked her out, which takes a pretty forcible punch or slap or whatever from a man to a woman, whatever. If that was the case, then it's kind of hard to see how a 2-game suspension is okay or is justifiable when you've got guys like Gordon from the Browns.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go.
Yeah, I mean he's suspended for the entire year for his 3rd DUI. How do you compare 3 times drinking and driving?
I'm even going to spin it a little further than that.
Yes, sir.
There's a schedule of levels of suspension for substance abuse in the NFL. First offense is, I believe it's 2 games, and 4, then a season, or 8, then a season. However it goes, but there's an ironclad schedule, right?
Right.
We saw, dating back a few years now, we saw Ricky Williams lose an entire season to this, right?
Sure did, yeah. So
the first suspension is 4 games. I do know that. The first suspension is 4 games for substance policy abuse, whatever their terminology is. So in other words, you get suspended for 4 games for smoking pot, which is now legal in at least a few states in the country. Yep. And you get 2 games for knocking your wife out? I mean, really? That seems ridiculous to me.
That's why I said we don't know. I mean, we know from a positive drug test. Okay, then yes, we know that.
Well, we know that it was severe enough that his wife went and petitioned for Roger Goodell to take leniency on him so it didn't ruin his career. We know that there were police calls. We know that if he said, I was defending myself, you don't defend yourself typically by running. So he defended himself in a manner of physicality. I think we do know that.
We know something happened, and that's my point. We know something happened, but we don't know what happened. And you can't. I'm sorry, but if you get a positive drug test.
Okay, okay, but here's the deal. If this, we're going to know what happened. The supposedly law enforcement, that's their job, is to go find out what happened, right?
Well, supposedly.
Then why not tell him, all right, you know what? Until we figure out what happened here, you're not playing.
Because that's the biggest question about what Commissioner Goodell has done so far.
Well, and to me, it's almost like, the punishment has to fit the crime. I'm sorry, to me, smoking a joint versus knocking your wife out, there's no real comparison there. A DUI I can kind of get.
No, you're right.
A DUI I can kind of get, because you are getting into the whole point then of, well, you're putting others at risk, and just the general, don't drink and drive, folks, is what we're trying to say. It's very unsafe. But of sitting there smoking a joint with your pals, I mean, I'm sorry. Ricky Williams, the most notorious pothead in the history of sports. Is that a fair statement?
When you go on tour with Lenny Kravitz and you get to have that good of a time. Yeah, exactly.
Scenario when that guy would cold cock somebody? I mean, he's the most peaceful dude that you'll ever see. I mean, he lived in a tent in his backyard with a buddy from Radio Shack, for Christ's sake.
Okay, and that's the thing. We're getting to the point in whether you like it or not, and I don't care what your opinion is, we're getting to the point in our society that marijuana is becoming more and more
It's accepted.
I mean, yeah, it's getting to where people understand that some people do it, some people don't, whatever. It's up to you.
Well, let me tell you, there's no state in this country where it's legal to double up your fist and strike somebody, man or woman. That's
even that you make a great point, but it makes it even worse when you're talking about a man hitting a woman. That's
the obvious.
Completely inexcusable in not just our society, but any society. And if there's any society that approves of that, they should be extinct.
And then the other part of that is you're talking about a guy defending himself from his wife a woman rather small in stature. And this is a guy that makes a living fending off 300-pound defensive linemen. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, okay, I'm not saying he should stand there with his hands behind his back and take a beating, but come on, man, get your hands wrapped around her, do something, subdue her, get out of the elevator and get help. That I'm fine with. But when you get to the point of cold cocking somebody, because whatever happened in there, we do know she went into that elevator conscious, and she came out unconscious, and there wasn't nobody in there but them two. I mean, at some point in time, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it ain't no damn possum.
Well, that's something that I think most of the people that have read about this story, including me, didn't think about. I mean, this is Ray Rice. This is a running back, a Super Bowl champion running back who has defended himself against offensive linemen that are bigger than me and you combined.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's out there with like Mario Williams and
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking about a guy that is. He's got to be able to.
When you hear about one of these guys that's a martial artist, I don't speak the language well, but a 5th-degree black belt, or you hear UFC, or Brock Lesnar, a famous UFC fighter, right? Isn't he held?
Let's not call him a famous UFC fighter.
Well, I'm terrified of him.
He's kind of a joke in the UFC, but
whatever. Chuck Liddell, Ken Shamrock. I'm not a UFC guy. Insert random UFC legend here. Aren't those guys?
Randy Couture.
Okay, Randy Couture, whomever. Insert those guys there. If they got in a bar fight, aren't they held to a little different standards of being punished? Because
that's not fair. That's not fair.
Well, isn't
that's not fair.
I mean,
just because someone is famous for choking,
it's not a matter of famous.
Hitting people.
But it's not a matter of famous. It's a matter
of standard, though?
Huh?
Where's the standard? Where's the standard? I mean, just because someone's famous for being very good at choking someone out or knocking someone out, they get held to a different standard from just a civilian.
Sure.
The exact same thing.
Doesn't a politician get held to a different set of standards supposedly for what they say, because that's what they do for a living? I mean, when you go into a master carpenter's house, don't you expect to see a house prettier than yours?
No, because I really don't watch that much HGTV.
I mean, but you know what I'm saying, though. Sure. I mean, if you go into a bar and you got a bartender that's been, going into somebody's house, and the guy's owned a bar for 30 years, and he makes you a cocktail, don't you expect it to be pretty good? I mean, if you go over to a chef's house for a barbecue, don't you expect it to knock your socks off?
Well, we're talking about two different things, though. We're talking about...
It is a different set of standards, and you get into that whole thing of, you're talking about a 230-pound spark plug in Ray Rice, who plays in a violent collision sport, being trapped in an elevator that's 10 by 10 maybe, with a woman that I don't know what she weighs. She weighs about 20 if she weighs that. She's not a very big lady. There's a better way to subdue her than to render her unconscious. Now, if he were in there with I'm a pretty good sized fella. I'm 6'3", 215 or so. If he's in there with me and I start taking a poke at him and he knocks me out, you know what? Okay, man, I ask for it. I got that coming. And this what I'm saying about like a UFC guy is if you go at Randy Couture, I'm not saying that he stands there and lets you pummel him. I don't mean that. But if he kicks you in the knee and slings you up against the wall and you're done for, and then he goes down and chokes you out and breaks both your knees and breaks your ankle because he knows how, there is a line there. That's what I'm saying.
I think we're almost on the same page. I think what I'm trying to get at is that the main thing that I want to end this story with is we don't know.
Well, I think we know enough.
We don't know.
I think that we know enough, and I think that 2-game suspension's a joke. I think it's a travesty. And I'm going to close it with this question for you then.
Well, hold on. Before you close it, before you say that, I would like to put this out there. If if everything that we think is true, again, we think because we don't know, but if everything we think is true, what is the bigger issue in football today? Is it smoking marijuana, or is it knocking a female unconscious?
Knocking a female unconscious.
And I agree with you if we know that's what happened.
Now, like I said, we know they went in and she was conscious. We know there was no one in there but those two, and we know that he drug her out. So unless you just slipped on a bar of soap that someone left in the elevator and cracked her skull, he knocked her out.
But we don't know. I'm gonna make that a point.
Let me close up. I have a question for you that is related, but it's a little off on this. The NFL right now has become this multimedia mega billion-dollar conglomerate. Everything is the biggest sport in this country by far. Agreed?
Absolutely.
Have we reached the point where it's too big for one man to run it with an iron fist? And I'm not going to take credit for this question. This came from Mike Lupica article, who is I think he is one of your favorite pundits in sports also. He's one of my favorites as well. And that was the question that he posed is, have we reached the point where football is too big a business for one man to try and run by himself?
I don't think so. I really don't, because, as much as you like the other commissioners in sports, they're doing their job. Goodell's doing his job, and he's got a whole bunch of helpers, for lack of a better word, just like the rest of them.
Yeah, but here's the difference, though. After the LeBron decision too, we're not going to hear more about the NBA now for 3 months. It's pretty well over till the preseason starts. With baseball, when it ends in October, I think early November now, you hear a little about the winter meetings in January, but for the most part till March, you don't hear anything about baseball. Football is a year-round sport now. Between the draft is the draft is one of the biggest things in all the sport now. And honestly, the second biggest sport in the country is college football. Let's be honest, it is.
I disagree there. I'm going to disagree with you.
TV ratings would indicate that it is.
I'm pretty sure baseball is still there.
Yeah, if you look at TV ratings, it's not close.
Well, TV ratings because college football is played.
The NFL draft got a higher rating than Game 7 of the 2011 World Series. How about that?
No, Game 6 is a lot better. That's why.
I'm just saying. The NFL, I love baseball. Is my favorite sport. You know that.
Yeah.
But the NFL is something that's not like anything else in this country. But that's all. I just want to say I think Roger Goodell, I think it's gotten too big for him to run the whole thing. The baseball used to have an American League commissioner, a National League commissioner, and then a baseball commissioner.
Yeah, but let me ask you this though. Did Goodell himself make it that way? Because I'm sorry, and I'm lacking on a name right here. The previous commissioner did not come down the way that he's come down with his suspensions and fines and everything else. It wasn't like that before Goodell took office. He took office and he immediately he became the Vince McMahon of the NFL.
Yeah, but has it helped any?
Maybe he brought this on himself.
Has what he done really changed much? I mean,
depends how many times people have got to suit up and play.
Yeah, but what I mean is, you still see more legal difficulties come. What was it I read the other day that there were five Baltimore Ravens arrested this offseason?
Yes, exactly.
What? Well, there's 32 teams, so if that were the average, you're looking at 160 people. What? That's craziness, man. So whatever he's doing, I'm sorry. Yeah, he's taking people off the field, but it isn't working. It's not working.
Well, I mean, maybe he does need help, or maybe he doesn't need to be the commissioner anymore.
I mean
that's the next question you need to pose.
Well, and there's got to be some level of, you look at baseball and what they did with the steroid scandal, the crime now, the punishment now is so vast. And the thing I love is the players. Skip Schumacher was one of the guys that stepped up and said, no, increase the penalty. Make it more severe. Get these guys out of the game. And they have. you know. But the funny thing about it is, you hear about a football player that got caught with steroids, that gets 4 games, ho hum. Von Miller, nobody cares. You hear about a middle infielder in AAA getting caught with steroids, and oh my God, it's all over ESPN. It's all over ESPN. The difference is that, you know, when Von Miller gets caught, he misses 4 games. When this middle infielder gets caught, he's gone for 100 games now. You know, he's out of there, man. But they still want to bring it up, and like it's the biggest problem baseball has. And we're off subject now. But I just want to say, in closing, 2 games, joke. Should have been sorry, you got to do at least 4. It's a quarter of a season. You got to make it comparable to other penalties. I really think it should have been 8. I think it should have been 8 games.
And like I'm like I said, my 2 points on it. In closing, if we knew exactly what happened, because we don't. I'm sorry, we don't. If we knew exactly what happened, I'm sorry, kick the guy out for a year. I'm 100% down with that. But since
I think we know enough. I mean, we've put people in the electric chair with a hell of a lot less information and a hell of a lot less solid evidence than what we have on this.
Well, but
I'm going to tell you right now, if me and you walked in an elevator together and it was on camera, and when we walked in, you were alive, and when we got done, I drug your body out with 3 bullet holes in it, would I go to prison for the rest of my life?
Who knows? Because who knows what happened
yes.
in there. All I'm saying, you got to have some more evidence. Let's move on. Let's move on.
So we're going to hit a couple of spots quickly here. One of the things that I do want to talk about is the kind of the NBA roundup as we're to the end of free agency now. We pretty well know where everybody's going to play with the exception of Kevin Love, who's presumably going to go somewhere, probably Cleveland or Chicago. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on Kevin Love and what you've seen in the offseason of the NBA so far this year?
Well, see, my main point, and I just thought it was so crazy because, admittingly, you are a much bigger NBA guy than I am. We both know that. But I just thought it was insane how the entire NBA world was on pause waiting on my guy, LeBron.
He held the league hostage, you know. And I don't say that in a bad way.
That's a great way to put it. Nobody, we're talking about Carmelo. I mean, everyone was waiting to see what's Bron gonna do. Yeah. And then,
if he weren't in Cleveland, would Kevin Love be considering going there? No, not at all. Wouldn't even be on his radar.
But right now, I guarantee they just signed Wiggins. You know, their number 1 draft pick. They signed him. But if you're Wiggins, are you even comfortable packing your bags and heading to Cleveland, or are you going to wait and see where you're going to get dealt to in case you go somewhere else?
If he goes anywhere, it's Minnesota. You know, and the problem with Minnesota, right? The problem they have is if they trade for Wiggins.
Yeah.
Do you really think? And say Wiggins does become, you know, the next star of this league, right? Is he going to stay in Minnesota after 3 years?
Not if he gets a chance somewhere else, no.
No way. It's no way. I mean, I've been to Minnesota. It's 1 degree all the time. 1 degree. It's all the time 1 degree. You know, the people are nice. The people are great. But it's not exactly a basketball mecca. I mean, you know, there's a reason Kevin Garnett had to leave there to go chase and win a title. Stephon Marbury didn't last long. People aren't going to stay there, man. You know, so that's what
it's just like Kevin Durant, correct? Can you tell me right now, honestly, that he's happy in Oklahoma?
Well, and even if he is, he didn't sign with Jay-Z and Rock Nation. He didn't sign with Jay-Z and Rock Nation to play basketball in Oklahoma City.
No.
He just didn't. He is on his way to one of the New York teams, at least Philly, one of the, you know, L.A. maybe, the Hope, you know, but he's definitely not going to stay in Oklahoma City. So, you know, I feel like Minnesota's it's tough to win there. You know, they've got Kevin Love, at least a top, 10 player in the league, 26 and 12. I mean, that's no joke. I mean,
the difference is the NBA is a big market organization, you know, big market sport region. You know, you can't have Oklahoma being a big team every year. You know, you got to have New York, L.A. You know, every once in a while you can throw in Seattle or something that gets competitive, but it's Oklahoma is just not going to be the place for.
Which, Jeremy, that prompts me to this question that I'm going to ask real quick. And I asked you this the other day, and I thought it was an incredible question, and I was really proud of it. You're talking about the NBA right now. Basically, to be competitive long term, you've got to be, Miami, with the exception of the Spurs, but the LA, New York, at least Philly. You got to have an owner like Mark Cuban in Dallas, Chicago, obviously. You look at the NFL, they've got a lot of the same teams that have been good for a lot of years. That's mostly because the NFL is driven by quarterbacks. But how is it that baseball without a salary cap still has the most parity? I mean, I don't have an answer for that, and I'm still thinking
No,
about it.
that's a great question.
I just wanted that on the record for this is baseball with no salary cap. I don't care right now, and it wasn't this way 10 years ago. Understand? It's just happened. But you can be the Pirates. Look at the Tampa Bay Rays. Their payroll is what, $60? I mean, they constantly trade off their best players because they can't afford to pay them, and year in and year out, they're in the race. You look at you look at what Pittsburgh's been doing last year and this year. You look at what Kansas City is on the crux of doing. They're really good, really fast. The Cubs, big market, but look at the way they're building. They're not signing a bunch of 35-year-olds. They got kids. Look at what Oakland's doing out there. Look what the Mariners are doing this year. So, anyways, interesting question. If anybody has an answer to that, shoot us an email, man. I'd love to hear anybody's.
I'd love for anyone to talk to us about that, because I'd love to get some feedback on that. That's a great question, Brian.
Well, Jeremy, this is the part of the show here where I'm going to do a little rant. My last name's Day. We're going to call this the Day in Court. And this is an NBA-driven statement. And I will preface this statement, and I'll give you a minute to retort when I'm done, by saying, for those of you who don't know, I am a lifelong Laker fan. Grew up with number 32 jersey, Magic Johnson, my favorite player in the world, still my favorite player of all time. But I want to address a couple of things that I had a conversation with somebody the other day about, and talking about that short list of the greatest players of all time. And I think it's I don't like to say of all time, because I didn't see Oscar Robertson or Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain. I didn't see those guys. So I say the best players I've ever seen, because that's all I can be a fair judge of. And I go back to the early 80s. So about 30-plus years is what I'm looking at in this statement. You look at the greatest players, obviously Michael Jordan, who I think is the greatest player that I've ever seen, and I think of all time. You look at Magic Johnson, you look at Larry Bird, you go down the list. Obviously LeBron's getting in there. But I want to say something about a guy that's been the villain of sports other than A-Rod for the last 15 years. That's Kobe Bryant. Kobe coming off of a terrible injury. I don't know that he'll ever be the same again. But I want to point out something that I was, in my perusing the web, that I came across the other day. Of all those guys that have won all those titles, you look at Michael Jordan, 6 titles, right? He had another Hall of Famer with him for all 6 of those in Scottie Pippen. And Dennis Rodman for, I think, 3 of those. Horace Grant, who's not a Hall of Famer, but a borderline guy, for those other 3. You look at Larry Bird. He had 3 Hall of Famers in the starting lineup with him. He had Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and Dennis Johnson. You look at LeBron, the 2 titles he's won, Dwayne Wade, certain Hall of Famer. Chris Bosh, a little early to say, but potentially a Hall of Famer. You look at Kobe in his first series of championships, the 3 he played with Shaquille O'Neal, obviously one of the dominant forces of all time. But here's what I think he did that nobody on that list has done besides him. He won 2 more titles without another Hall of Famer on that roster. Paul Gasol, as nice a player as he is, if he makes the Hall of Fame, it's because he's an international player. But you look at him, he's 17 points, 7 boards. Not a Hall of Fame resume. I'm sorry, it's not. But Kobe Bryant won 2 more titles without another Hall of Famer. Who else on that Mount Rushmore of basketball can you say did that?
Is it time for me to come in?
Yeah.
Nobody. Nobody. And as well as I do, we're former roommates, and I watched more Kobe Bryant basketball around you than I would have ever even thought about watching. So yeah, he is a completely different type of player. I completely agree with you there. And I hate to say it, but I think I have to agree with you, because he didn't need the stars. Like
He had a really good cast around him. I'm not saying he had nobody.
Huh?
I said he had a really good cast around him on those second teams that won.
Yeah, but how many times did he have a really good cast around him and they didn't do anything?
Yeah.
I mean, there was certain seasons. You go back to it, certain seasons that he won it, not by himself, but he didn't have a whole lot of help as far as stats go.
Yeah. So I'm saying that to address this new trend of people forming big threes or big fours or whatever the hell they're forming these days.
Yeah.
You look at it starting in Boston, that Celtics team that had 3 Hall of Famers on it, and Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
You look at Miami doing the same thing. And it wasn't like these teams drafted these guys. And that's the difference. The Spurs' big 3 with Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker, they all got drafted by the Spurs. They didn't go out and just sign the 3 best players they could get together. They drafted those guys. That was their team,
Well, see, and that was the thing. L.A. tried that when they got Nash and the rest of the guys. They tried that, and it didn't work.
It did not work, and it doesn't work. But for me, when you look at that team that Kobe won the last 2 titles with, you're talking about Pau Gasol and Andrew Bynum as the second and third best players on those teams. Andrew Bynum pretty well out of the league now. Pau, really, really good player, bordering on great player. But, if he's the second best player, is he as good as Scottie Pippen? Oh, God, it's not even close. Scottie Pippen's 1,000 times better. Is he as good as Kevin McHale? Not even close. Not even in the ballpark, You even look at Akeem Olajuwon. He won a couple of titles with Clyde Drexler, Is he as good as Drexler? God, no.
No. He's not good, that's for sure.
I want to send that shout out to Kobe Bryant, just in saying, when you guys hate on Kobe, and Kobe does a lot to be hated for, I get that. He is Darth Vader, and that's part of the reason I love the guy, One more thing, too, on ESPN.com today, there was a stat. They did a vote, they did the poll of the nation or whatever.
Hold that thought. Because since we're just saying that about Kobe, you're a Kobe hunk. You love him to death.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it great? Doesn't it feel great that the attention is off of him now? That they don't. I mean, the negative attention. Let me say that negative attention is off of him now. That ties in
directly with this statement. The 2 most competitive professional athletes I've ever seen in my life are Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant.
Right.
I think that's a fair statement. This morning on ESPN, on their poll of the nation or Sports Nation, whatever they call it, they had a poll. How many years as an elite player does Kobe Bryant have left in the league? The options were none, 1 year, or more than 1 year. 57% of people said he has 0 years left as an elite player.
That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. Well, I don't even like the guy, and that's stupid.
I'm going to tell you right now, you think Kobe Bean Bryant saw that?
I hope so. For him, for the Lakers' sake, I hope he saw that.
And I'm going to tell you what, the Lakers aren't going to be any good. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I'll be honest.
Well, they'll probably make the playoffs, but they won't do anything.
If they were in the East, they would. In the West, man, I don't know. That West is brutal. It's going to depend on what Julius Randle does. But I'm going to tell you right now, Kobe Bryant's going to have some games this year where he just comes out and he's the bulldog and he makes that terrifying face. And
I know. I hate that face too. But Kobe is a lot like, to me, and it's not the same anymore, but I used to compare him to Tiger Woods every time.
Yeah.
Go ahead and wake up the sleeping dog. The guy that hasn't won a tournament in 6-7 months or something like that. Go ahead and wake him up. I mean, you even do the same thing in NASCAR. Talk about Jimmy Johnson or someone, but yeah, go ahead and tell Kobe he's no good. Whatever.
That's your that's my comparison to Kobe, or the Tiger is always LeBron. You've heard me say that before. That I think Tiger's the best front runner in all of sports. If he gets a lead, if he gets his foot on your throat, you're done.
Yeah, I know.
Well, he's never come from behind and won a major on Sunday.
Never has.
LeBron's the same way. If he goes into that fourth quarter with a lead, you're done. But what he doesn't do is the things that you see Kobe and Michael do is you're down by 4 with 4 minutes left, and all of a sudden you win by 2 somehow. I'm not knocking LeBron. I've learned to become a fan of the guy. I have. But he's a different kind of cat. But anyways, that was my thought for the day. Anybody want to give us a thought on that? Just something I picked up on that Kobe's done that none of those other guys have really ever done. So
hey,
Jimmy,
you want to get a little little freshman quarterback.
Yeah, but, he's
Going
the
on.
name on the lips of everybody right now. Johnny Football, Johnny
I
Manziel.
mean,
I'm going to
he's the
sit back
biggest
and listen.
celebrity in football right now.
Tell me what you think about him, James.
Honestly, and you're probably not going to like it, but I'm a fan. I am. If I see him on SportsCenter, if I see him on TMZ, if I see him on PerezHilton.com, it doesn't matter. I'm watching the guy. I'm that interested in him, and that's why he's so famous right now, because everyone's interested in what he does. Now, I've got to say right now, I get the guy's back. I've got his back right now because he is 21 years old. So if he wants to go to the club and take a Instagram photo with Justin Bieber, who cares? As long as he goes, he reports to camp and plays as hard as he can for the Cleveland Browns, then why is the guy getting such a bad rap? I'm sorry, I've got his back, and I'm probably in the minority about that.
Here's what I think.
Yep.
I pretty well across the board agree with everything you just said.
Except?
No, I pretty well agree with everything you just said. I got his back. I'm rooting for the kid, and I'll tell you, and I'll tell you why. Who are we just talking about?
Johnny Manziel. Johnny Football.
Before that, who are we talking about?
Kobe.
And what did I say Kobe was? He'd been the biggest villain in basketball for 15 years.
So I see where you're going with this.
Johnny Manziel, if he can produce and win games, he has a chance to be the biggest villain in the history of the NFL. He has a chance to be, this guy has a chance to be the most polarizing figure in all of sports. He's not going to win this year. Let's be honest. If 3 years from now he somehow takes the Browns to 12-4, they make a playoff run, and he's out there flashing the money. Because here's the thing about the kid that I do like. He ain't scared. He don't have any worse in him. There's a reason the last 2 years against a vaunted Alabama defense that nobody scores on. It's the reason they hung 90 points in 2 years on them. It's Johnny Manziel, because guess what, man? He ain't scared of Nick Saban. Nick who? He don't care. I'm gonna go out there and hang a 44 spot on you. They beat him 2 years ago. They got beat in the shootout this past year. He ain't scared.
No, you're completely right. And every single, he's 21 years old. Yeah, but I'll tell you what, when you see him in an interview, especially like the one he did yesterday, that's a 25, 26-year-old quarterback that's been in the league for 4 or 5 years and has got, already had his up and downs. I mean,
if he were 6'4" and 225, I would feel a hell of a lot better about it than I do with him being closer to 5'11" and 200 pounds. Simply because, Russell Wilson showed that a shorter quarterback can win. Russell Wilson's 5'11" and 220.
He's like 5'11", 180 maybe.
Who, Johnny Manziel?
No, Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson, dude, trust me, we made him here in town. He's built like, I'll go back to Ray Rice. He looks like a running back. His shoulders are broader than mine, dude. He is a fire plug.
Pretty sure you got a man crush on him.
No, I do like Russell Wilson a great deal, but he's broad. Johnny's a little guy. I mean, he and he'll fill out some. He'll have to. But what scares me is, the first time, he's going to be playing against a lot of big-time players, the first time Troy Polamalu comes around that end, or the first time Mario Williams or Jadeveon Clowney comes around there and centers him, whew.
You know what? I cannot wait. As a fan of his, cannot wait to see that happen, because I guarantee you he's going to have that, and I know you don't like the guy, he's going to have that Brett Favre mentality where he's going to pop up and say,
But Brett Favre was 6'3", 235.
That's fine. Hey, I'm a little guy. I'm 5'8".
I get that. I'm rooting for the guy. The only thing that worries me is his size. I heard a great statement the other day that said if you have two NFL players, two guys in any sport that run the same 40, that have the exact same talent level, the exact same, everything is identical, but one guy's 4 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier. Which one are you taking? You're
I'm not
taking
gonna.
a guy that's 4 inches taller. You are. If you're not, you're
I
losing.
watch him play in front of me.
You just are. The size matters in the NFL. But I'm rooting for the guy. I think he's brash. I think he's what the NFL needs. I mean, I think this kid has a chance. You know, the thing is, he's got to produce. And if he goes out there and produces, I mean, because the NFL, as great as it is, does it really have that polarizing villain? I mean, maybe Tom Brady, maybe. I don't know. I mean, you've got the guy in the white hat and Peyton Manning out there.
Well, and I'd have to say that, I mean, is Michael Vick in that category now that?
But it's not for the right reasons, though. I mean, I'm talking about
You're talking about, okay, I understand. You're talking about a guy that is doing the right things, but is looked at in a different perspective.
Reggie Miller was a great villain, I mean, he never did anything wrong, but he was a great villain. If you were a Knicks fan, you wanted to kill that guy.
Terrell Owens, I mean, one of the greatest receivers there was, but golly, it was just.
So we're both rooting for Johnny Football.
Oh, absolutely.
And speaking of villains, I feel like this is a nice way to head into this topic here. Rumors are circulating this week that Donald Sterling, who has filed his 73rd class action lawsuit now, that Chris Paul may not want to play in LA if he's not gone, as well as Doc Rivers may not want to coach there.
I can't blame either one of them.
No. The unfortunate thing is, I think the NBA is doing everything they can to get him out of there, but they can't circumvent the due process, the legal system. Because we are in America and everybody has a right to jury of their peers, a right to stand trial, a right to have something ruled on. I'm not taking up for Donald Sterling. I think he's a scumbag, and I cannot say that more clearly. I think he is a scumbag.
Well,
I think it's a tough spot for Doc and for Chris Paul and for those other guys, because I wouldn't want to play for the guy either. But to me, it almost makes the NBA look bad because it looks like they're letting this guy be a pariah. One thing I'll say for Adam Silver, well, he's done a hell of a job. He
might.
At some point, your hands are tied by the United States legal system. They're just tied.
Well, here's what I'll say about Sterling, because I think we can keep this one pretty short. I'm tired of hearing about him. I'm sorry, but the guy is a nut job. He is absolutely, as you like to say, criminally insane.
He is criminally insane.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that is age related.
I'm tired of hearing about him. I'm tired about hearing about his crazy wife, ex-wife, whatever you want to call her. That whole thing. Let's put that on Jerry Springer one day, and that could be a whole different show, because this whole thing needs to be over with.
Yeah. The only question I have, and I guess this will actually go back to David Stern. Why the hell did you guys let him do this stuff? Why the hell did you let him operate in this manner for 30 years?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knew this guy was a scumbag.
They knew it. But it took something this crazy, this insane to come out to say all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this guy.
That being said, though, don't you think Doc Rivers knew he was a racist scumbag before he signed to go coach out there? Everybody else did. I'm
sure he knew, but Brian, money talks.
I know it does. You're right there. That's a valid point.
Hey, like I say, are you done talking about Sterling? Because I'm so tired of hearing about it that I don't even want to talk.
The only thing I'll say to the guys out there in LA is, those fans, the fans of the Clippers, they deserve better. It's not their fault. They don't want Donald Sterling any more than you do.
No, they deserve much better.
If the league are just throwing up their hands and saying, oh, he's the owner, we can't do anything about it. Yeah, I'd do the same thing. I'd say, you know what, sue me for breach of contract because I ain't playing for you. But
I will say this about the Clippers. The Clippers get, until last season, they've always got a bad rap. They've been so terrible for so long.
Well, Donald Sterling is a terrible owner.
Well, yeah, one of the classiest things I think I've ever seen is when the Clippers went to center court, took their jerseys off, instead of going to Twitter, Facebook, whatever, and saying, cuss words and whatever negative things they could say, derogatory things they could say, just going to half court, taking your jersey off and saying, there you go. That's how we feel about you, and it made. I think that made a big statement.
Well, actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
You do. Well, all right, so we're going to hit something light here. A lot of you guys that are watching this probably buy sports cards from me. I own a small sports card business called BNC Sports Cards, which is the channel you're on right now. And one of the things we're going to try to do is I'm going to do a brief little 60-second rundown of the hobby, of the sports collecting hobby. Most of you guys will get this from me. You know, I'm doing 2 breaks tonight, so you're going to get me on camera plenty tonight, but I'm going to give it to you a little anyways. One of the things we've got going this week, we're breaking the night, is a full case of Elite Football. I think it's going to be a blast. You can see the case actually right there behind me, waiting to be opened up. We've got a case of Bowman Chrome Baseball up there. We're cracking the night also. Half case for cracking the night also. A couple of the products coming out this next week or two. Elite Football, as we just mentioned, we got Bowman Platinum Baseball, a real high-end product. August is a great month for the hobby. We got Topps Finest Baseball. We got Topps Football. We got Chrome Baseball. It's going to be a blast. A lot of the football stuff's really heating up with Johnny Manziel, with Blake Bortles, with those guys, Jadeveon Clowney. A lot of heat. Minnesota Vikings, another one. The Bills, the Bucks, some really good teams for these breaks. So if you guys have any questions on that, feel free to email me also. I'd love to hear your comments on it. The hobby's a lot of fun these days, guys. You know, if you're not involved and you're overwhelmed and you don't know how to get back involved, shoot me an email, man. I'll be glad to answer any question you have. BNC Sports Card Factory at gmail.com. So that's what I have to say about that, Jeremy. So we've reached the point now to where the trade deadline's this week in Major League Baseball. The races couldn't be closer. What's your thoughts? What you see happening?
Man, I cannot believe the way the season is. It's been so up and down all year long. I could not tell you one team besides maybe Oakland, which I couldn't even say that because Oakland could turn around and choke in the playoffs like they have in the past. I couldn't tell you one team right now that I would go to Vegas and put a 50 spot on just because it's been that competitive and that just the entire season's been that up and down.
The scariest team in baseball to me is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Because what about the Angels? The best team. I'm saying they're the scariest team when you get to a best-of-7 series. Because they're going to throw Kershaw and Greinke at you, and whoo-wee, that's tough.
And not just them. I mean, you got
Ryu coming up the back end of that. Yeah, I know the Giants has picked up Jake Peavy, but Matt Cain and Tim Lincecum. I mean, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're not the pitchers they were. I mean, they can throw no hitters. That's fine.
I watched some of that game last night, and he's just. Golly, he is brutal, man. His curveball and his slider are completely unhittable. I mean, they're unhittable. You cannot hit them, and that's a terrifying. And then you got a guy too that spots the fastball like he does. Makes for some quick games.
All right, so real quick. So NL West, if you had to pick a winner right now, who is it?
I said the Giants the other day. I do. I think the Dodgers. I just think they've got too much talent. I
think they do too, and I think Kershaw is that type of leader. He's like Chris Carpenter was for the Cardinals.
And Yasiel Puig. He's such a one. He's Manny Ramirez. Man, he's just a magnificent flake. Did you see the pictures that surfaced the other day? They took at his house and. There were a bunch of...
I don't think I did because I already know what you're talking about. If you're laughing that hard, I don't know what you're talking about.
On the counter behind him, there were a bunch of plastic bags, and they were all from like Dollar General Store and Family Dollar Store and Save a Lot and all of these very low-end, inexpensive retail outlets, which is where they were buying everything at. Talking about a guy that's making millions of dollars, But to me, that's why I root for the guy. I know a lot of purists don't, and I consider myself a purist, and I do. Because you look at a guy that 3 years ago, if you watch that documentary about him, man, he got to this country.
And I encourage everyone to go out and watch YouTube it or something.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I root for the guy, and I think he's as exciting as any player in the game right now. You never know. He's Manny Ramirez, but he can run and catch,
Yeah, which is different.
Yeah, Manny couldn't exactly catch. I mean, he could sell a barbecue grill on eBay like nobody's business. No, I'll give him that.
2 nights ago, Puig had 3 triples. 3.
Yeah,
We're talking
three.
three triples in one game.
There are a lot of really good hitters this year that won't have 3 triples in 162 games.
No,
So,
and
I want to ask you about a comment that came out this past week where Jose Canseco, speaking of flakes,
oh jeez,
where
reality star Jose.
he extended the olive branch to Mark McGwire. He wanted to make peace with him and so on and so forth. And Mark McGwire basically said, no thanks. I have no interest in it. You you did this, you did that. I'm over you. I'm done with you. Go away. Leave me alone forever. What are your thoughts on that?
Being a Cardinal fan, obviously, I've always had McGuire's back. I know that he did wrong, but Canseco, my whole thoughts about the whole Canseco-McGuire thing is that Canseco didn't have the same talent and knew that. He's not up on the list like McGuire is as far as.
Because I'm going to tell you right now, if Jose Canseco hadn't got into the juice and gotten unhealthy, Jose Canseco was a lot better player than Mark McGwire. It wasn't.
He might have had more natural talent.
Jose Canseco, both of them at their prime, Jose Canseco was a lot better player than Mark McGwire.
Okay, but I'm saying, but look, okay, but let's talk about just open up a book right now and see where both of them rank. Okay, so what I'm saying is, Canseco is jealous. He's jealous of what McGwire accomplished and what he didn't accomplish.
Let me put it to you like this: when Mark McGwire issued his big statement and his apology some years ago, right?
It wasn't a statement or apology. It was an
admission of guilt. It was an admission after he lied, openly lied, in front of Congress, by the way.
Right, no. He didn't lie. He said, I'm not here to talk about the past. He never said he didn't do it. He said, I'm not here to talk about the past.
Which means I take the fifth, and he wasn't even advised how to properly do that.
Right. Well, we all know what he meant by that, but he just never said. He never said, I didn't do it.
Okay, but that's some pretty villainous stuff he did. Let me put it to you like this. He came back to St. Louis some years later as a hitting coach and walked on the field and got a massive ovation, right?
Standing ovation, 45,000 people.
Now he's in L.A. playing or hitting coach for the Dodgers. He's been pretty well received around the league, right?
Yeah.
That's because he was forgiven, right?
For the most part, maybe.
But has he shown any? Here's the big difference, though. McGwire lied. Jose Canseco, while it was a scummy move, he told the truth. Everything he told was the truth. And I'm going to tell you right now, we wouldn't have the steroid testing in place that we have and the clean game that we have right now if it weren't for the book Juice that Jose Canseco wrote. Did he make himself,
I agree with you on
a pariah for life by writing that book? Of course he did. Did he break locker room confidence? Of course he did. Am I saying
he didn't care?
No, he didn't care. But here's the deal. Mark McGwire is back in the game because he was forgiven. Because he was forgiven for lying. What Jose Canseco is asking Mark McGwire to do is to forgive him for telling the truth. And Mark McGwire says no.
All right. Let's say that, and this is, totally just making up a scenario. You and I go out. We both have significant others. You do something, you with another lady, let's just say that. You cheat on your wife.
Right.
I tell the truth. Now, how's that going to go down, in 2 years when I ask for forgiveness? Are you going to accept that, or are you going to?
Well, it's a very different situation.
I know it's totally different. I'm just throwing out a scenario here.
It wasn't 2 years; it was 10 years. That's what I said. I'm not condoning Jose Canseco breaking locker room confidentiality, but I'm glad he did, for the sake of the game.
It changed it top to bottom.
Yeah,
home runs are a lot less expected now.
Yeah, they are, and the game is back to the game like it was when I grew up watching it now. All I'm saying is if Mark McGwire was willing to come back into baseball after lying and after cheating and after having the big summer of love with Sammy Sosa. Sammy Sosa, by the way, who's still not been forgiven, still a pariah. A-Rod did the same. They all lied. Rafael Palmeiro, they all lied. They're not back in baseball. Roger Clemens lied. Barry Bonds lied. Gary Sheffield lied. They're not back in baseball. But Mark McGwire is.
Well, you got to think, though, he got welcomed back into baseball through the, and I'm sure it sounds biased, but the best fans in baseball welcomed him back.
But doesn't one good favor deserve another? If 45,000 people in Busch Stadium were willing to forgive Mark, what the hell makes him so self-righteous to look down his nose at somebody else?
Probably just because of what he did in the city of St. Louis, and because
he ain't in St. Louis, he's in Los Angeles.
Yeah, but he got his. St. Louis was a door. St. Louis was a door. He walked through that big open door in St. Louis, and that led him into the rest of Major League Baseball.
Roger Clemens would love to walk through that door in Boston or New York.
But he would have exactly. He would have to. I mean, same thing. He would have to come to St. Louis. He would have to be a St. Louis player. He would have had to hit 70 home runs in St. Louis to get that kind of respect and love. And then now people don't care anymore because, I guess spend 3 years in St. Louis as a coach and then go to L.A.
I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of...
No, it's so sketchy. It's so on the line.
It's some hypocrisy in there. But let's talk about something good with baseball.
Let's talk about it.
This weekend, going on right now, actually, I was watching it before I came downstairs. We have the Hall of Fame induction in Cooperstown, New York, a place you and I are fortunate we both have been. We went together with a group of other malcontents. And
can't wait to tell that story someday.
Yeah, I know, right? Speaking of those stories we'll never talk about. But we were lucky to see that, and what a monument that whole place, that whole town is just
incredible. But if you can find it, though. If you can find it.
It's in the middle of nowhere, folks. This year going in one of the greatest classes of all time. Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, Frank Thomas, Bobby Cox, Tony La Russa, and Joe Torre.
Yeah. 3 amazing baseball players that I grew up. I mean, I remember being 6 years old watching these guys.
Yeah.
Like the first things that I watched, I mean, we had TBS, so I watched all the Braves games. So I had Glavine and Maddux, and then Frank Thomas. I used to imitate his swing.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the big hurt, and then, Jesus, the coaches, too.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say something brief about all these guys. Greg Maddux first. You know this. I think Greg Maddux is the greatest pitcher I've ever seen. I said that before Roger Clemens got blacklisted with the steroids. 15 plus wins in 17 straight years. We will never, ever, ever see that again. That will never, ever happen again.
What about the Gold Gloves, too?
18 Gold Gloves, 355 career wins. We will never see anybody win 300 games again, much less 355. That's never going to happen. You're talking about a guy, who didn't throw real hard, had pinpoint accuracy. I think they said today he was the only pitcher in history with over 300 wins, 3,000 strikeouts, and less than 1,000 walks. Less than 1,000 walks. Are you serious? So that's my thoughts on Greg Maddux. I think he's the best starting pitcher I've ever seen, and one of the 5 or 10 easily greatest players I've ever seen, period.
Let's see, and I'll be real quick about it. Flat out, I couldn't agree with you any more about what you just said about him. And for me, growing up, I was watching guys like Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens. He was so much that Maddux could pinpoint a pitch on the outside corner every time, and he knew exactly. He would walk off the mound as he threw the pitch because he knew he was hitting the outside corner, strike 3, get out of here. You could argue all you want or say, "Oh, Atlanta gets these calls." No, Maddux was that good, and it was
never threw a ball straight. Everything was moving. Next up, Tom Glavine, who was his mate for all those years in Atlanta, and I'm going to sum up Tom Glavine with a great story that I read this 6-7 years ago. When they won their only World Series in 1995, if you remember the big Dave Justice home run in that won that game 1-0.
I was watching.
He hit that in what, the 8th inning, I think it was, or
It
ninth
was
inning.
late. I know that.
Yeah, 8th or 9th inning he hit that. There was nothing to nothing. And the story was that Tom Glavine went into the dugout in the 7th inning and looked up and down the dugout at all of his teammates, all the position players, and said, "Are you guys going to score any damn runs tonight? Because I'll guarantee you they're not." And turned and walked away. Wow. I mean, what kind of just unbelievable
Voice.
moxie does that
It's
take?
confident. Yeah.
They're damn
That's
sure not going to. You guys get a run and we win. That's all I'm telling you. Score one run and we're going to win this game. And they scored one run and they won 1-0 because Tommy Glavine was as money a starting pitcher as anybody I've ever seen.
And you know what? It's so funny that you say that because I just saw this morning someone talking about how he was just the most quiet to himself, just, especially the days that he was on the mound. He didn't say anything to anyone, and he didn't want anyone to say anything to him. He was just quiet. But for him to say that's moxie, and that's why he's going to the Hall of Fame today, right now.
It is. Frank Thomas, I'll tell you another quick story about him. This was a little different. I talked about sports cards earlier. I've been in the hobby my whole life. We were doing a show in, I don't remember where at, and it was 1990. I do remember that. And Buddy, who's a real good friend of mine, Buddy Barger, 90 Leaf, for you sports card nerds that are out there, you'll know what I'm talking about. It just really blown up and was huge. Everybody was chasing it. I mean, if you couldn't find any, we found one guy at the end of the night that had like 8 packs left, and they were $3 a pack, which back then was craziness. You get most everything for 50, 60 cents a pack. So we bought half and half. I took 4 and he took 4. I got nothing. I swung and missed on all 4 packs. Buddy, meanwhile, opens 4 packs of 1990 Leaf baseball and pulls 2 Frank Thomas rookies out of it, and they were going for $100 apiece at the time. That's how hot Frank Thomas was. That's how good a player he was instantly. The impact he made, the White Sox had been and also ran in the American League for a lot of years. The impact that he made when he went to that team was immediate. And as good a right-handed hitter for a lot of years as you'll ever see.
See, my favorite thing about Frank Thomas is that I can't tell you how many days, because, growing up in Carbondale, Illinois, we got WGN, and, of course, they showed 95% Cubs games. And then every once in a while I got lucky enough to catch a White Sox game. But, I mean, he was the first thing I noticed. And I started collecting cards, too. And probably one of the first cards that I ever loved was a Frank Thomas.
Yeah.
And after that, once I started playing baseball, probably, 7 years old maybe or so, I used to mimic his swing. I used to love that because he would go through and then release his left hand down to the ground as he swung through the baseball. I mean, I never forgot that. And I to this day, and I'm going to say, I know he's a Hall of Famer now, but to this day, I don't think he gets the credit that he really does deserve. No one talks about him the way they talk about other players.
What he did is he played the game the way he kind of was a big part of the shift of the game because, he was a big.
He never did anything wrong.
Well, no, and he was a big slugger, but he didn't strike out a whole lot early in his career, and he also, if you go back and you look. He walked 100, 120 times a year. Now everybody talks about WAR and OBS and all that kind of stuff. Frank Thomas was the guy.
Which is overrated, by the way.
No, is it? Look at the teams that are winning. They're the teams that go by.
It really is. It is. It's we didn't go back 20 years ago.
That's a whole other topic. We're not going there. It's a whole other topic.
All right.
Whole other topic. I'm going to kind of lump these managers together. Bobby Cox, years with the Braves, also some early years with the Blue Jays. La Russa started with the White Sox, a bunch of years with the A's, and then, of course, finished up with the Cardinals. Torrey with Atlanta, with St. Louis, the Yankees, and then came back and did a little farewell tour with the Dodgers. He runs the organization now. The one thing I'm going to say about these 3 guys is for 30 years their teams dominated baseball.
Yeah. Absolutely, up and down.
Dominated baseball. Wherever they were at, most of the years, for Tony in St. Louis, most of the years for Bobby in Atlanta, and Joe, obviously his big run with the Yankees. They dominated at least 25 years of baseball. what more can you say about a manager? You got one job if you're a manager of a baseball team: win games, and they did it better than anybody.
Well, see, with Bobby Cox, I mean, we know the run that he had in Atlanta, and like I said, I watched Braves games since I first started watching baseball. I think it's so amazing that you got Joe Torre, who I watched for probably 7 years, maybe 6 or 7 years, and then the Cardinals fired him in 1995.
Joe Torre's a hell of a player too. He won an MVP award. Don't forget.
Yeah, third baseman for the Card. Yeah, but they fired him in '95, halfway through the season, and then Tony La Russa comes in, and I knew La Russa just because basically his mullet and who he was from in Oakland. But yeah, I didn't know much about him. He comes in, so we're talking about two managers from St. Louis that basically I've watched my entire life.
Well, they're all three very
the only
different
two managers that I've seen.
Yeah, all three very different managers. You know, Bobby Cox was more of a day-to-day grinder. You know, give your team a chance to win every game.
Not to mention how many times he's been ejected. That's a record.
Yeah, well, and Tony La Russa was more cerebral, and Joe Torre was more a manager of egos and personalities. But I also want to say this too, and then we're going to move on about these managers. One thing they all three had in common was somebody sitting beside him that was fantastic. Bobby Cox had Leo Mazzoni. Who's a better pitching coach than Leo Mazzoni? Tony La Russa all those years with Duncan. Dave Duncan. And Joe Torre all those years with Don Zimmer. You know, wow. You know, they knew one thing all three of those guys did well was they knew how to surround themselves with other people who knew the game. And kudos to all six of those guys, class acts. The one question I have is I saw today right before I came down and we started the cast here, Greg Maddux went in with 97-point-something% of the vote. What idiot didn't vote for Greg Maddux on the first ballot? I know they said, well,
I'd love to know it because
we did. What I'd do, I'd kick him in the stomach. I'd knock him out.
We need a lynching mob. We need something to find out who that was because that's absurd. You know what it is?
Nobody's ever been voted in 100%.
It's an older. I guarantee you, it's an older writer / voter
who's doing it in protest.
No one's as good as
somebody else,
Mafia or Ruth or something like that.
Yeah, they're idiots. I'm sorry, 355 wins. Idiot, moron.
They should have walked in. Should have walked in 100%.
Yeah, you know, it was like when Cal Ripken went in a few years ago and he got 99.3. Well, really, you didn't vote in Ripken? Come on, man. What are you doing with that? So congratulations to all six of those guys. Legends, love them, no problem with it. You know, if you get a chance to watch it today, they introduced all the Hall of Famers there. You know, and I got to see guys like Cal and one of my favorite players, Ricky Henderson. Andre Dawson was there. You know, I mean, it was a cool moment to see all those legends in one dais sitting up there in one little fell swoop. Oh, wow, I mean, like, that's my childhood. Sitting in 100 square feet of chairs.
That's awesome. And I can tell you this. I guarantee you, as much as you love Ricky Henderson, you don't love Ricky Henderson as much as Ricky Henderson loves Ricky Henderson.
Ricky loves him some Ricky. You know, he loved him some Ricky. Ricky Henderson's another topic for another day. I think he's the most underrated player in the history of baseball. So here's a little thing we're going to do, Jeremy. We're just about through here. We're going to do a little did you know? Because in the course of researching some of this, I came across some interesting stats. I'm going to give you a stat line of a player in baseball who you probably wouldn't even think about being considered for the Hall of Fame, and see if you can guess who he was. All right, this gentleman has 2,537 base hits. He has 515 doubles, almost 400 home runs. Over 1,300 RBIs. He's won 8 Gold Gloves, 3 Silver Sluggers, been an All-Star 4 times, and 5 times he's taken his team to the postseason. I'll give you some hints if you don't know right off the top of your head.
Give me one hint real quick.
He's 35 years old. He's been in the league for 15 years. Are those Hall of Fame numbers just blindly asking you that?
They're knocking on the door, but the way it's getting
now I'm going to probably give it away. He's a third baseman.
Scotty?
No.
A third baseman?
Exactly, right? You ready for me to tell you?
No.
And he's 35, so he's got 3 or 4 years left. He's still producing today.
Which league?
American League now.
Now?
He's played in both.
Uh,
We're not going to sit here forever and give it to you. 3, 2, 1. Adrian Beltre.
Golly, I didn't know his numbers were that good.
Age 20, he's going to have 3,000 hits. He's going to have well over 400 home runs. He's going to drive in, if he plays a couple of 3 more years, 1,700 runs. Brooks Robinson, who is generally considered one of the 2 or 3 greatest third basemen of all time, has 300 more hits. And Beltre's not done. Has less RBIs, has less doubles, way less home runs. He has 16 Gold Gloves to 8 for Beltre, but Brooks was the best defensive third baseman of all time. He took the Orioles to 6 postseasons, 5 for Beltre. So that was my stat of the week that just blew me away, that Adrian Beltre, if he plays 3 more years and is productive, he's going to get 3,000 hits, 460, 70 home runs, 1,600 RBIs. Adrian Beltre, folks, is probably going in the Hall of Fame one day. And, he did all of this. Huh? I mean, so just one of those little things out there. Now, Jeremy, I believe you've got a little question you have for me.
Well, I was going to say about Beltre, you remember when he got brought up, they jumped him from Double-A straight to the majors.
And they signed him when he was like 19, and he basically was here producing.
I mean, they brought him straight up. He was Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, and when you look at go look at his stats sometime. Look at some of the years he's had, man. He's finished in the top 10 in MVP like 6 times.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like,
I had no idea that his numbers were that great.
Yeah, 2,500 hits already. He's going to get 3,000 hits.
I mean, you're talking about he's got about the same amount of hits as Ichiro.
Yeah, I mean, basically when he's done, he's going to have Chipper Jones's numbers.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me ask you this. All right. Let me ask you. Okay. Do you remember? I'll let you think about it for a second because I haven't said it yet.
I don't know exactly what I'm thinking about.
Do you remember Demeet Hook?
Yeah, Dimitri Young.
Exactly. Yeah, have you seen anything about him lately?
Have I what?
Seen anything about him lately?
No, but I imagine he's somewhere keeping a buffet attendant busy.
Exactly. I knew you were going to go with a fat joke. All right. I saw a picture of him this morning, actually. This guy, he might be, I don't know, 185 and...
What?
Yeah, I mean, this guy has shrunk down. He's in shape. He made an appearance at Cincinnati yesterday.
What?
And I'm telling you, yeah, his afro weighs more than his belly does. I'll say that. Yeah, I could not believe it.
Cardinals. He was supposed to be a real hot shot prospect, and I think he had his best years were probably in was it Detroit were his best years where he had some nothing great, but he had some solid years.
Yeah, he was a clutch hitter. That's one thing about him.
Him getting a triple for the Cardinals where he come lumbering around in the postseason or something. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it took him about 3 hours to get to third base.
He slid into third, and like the entire Earth shifted on its axis. Well, Demeet Hook, interesting.
Demeet Hook, yeah. I could not believe when I saw that this morning. I think what it said was former MLB star, or it's just something like you wouldn't recognize former MLB star. And I was thinking, the poor guy's got like 500 pounds on him now.
Maybe he's over at Yasiel Puig's with all that food from Save-A-Lot or something. You think?
Someday someone's gonna fight you.
Well, Jeremy, that's winding us down, man. Any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to throw out there about the world of sports?
You know what? I do actually. I think all of us got into such a kick over soccer. You know, we had such a great time watching the World Cup, and I do. I'm more guilty than anyone else about how insane America got about watching the World Cup. But I've noticed lately on especially SportsCenter and shows like that, they're trying to put the MLS on there more and more, and I'm just going to tell you right now, it's going to fall out. They're going to find time for other things because the highlights of the Galaxy against whoever and blah, 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 not happening. It's just not going to work, and everyone's going to go back to loving baseball and football and basketball, and college starting here soon.
I don't know why.
A lot more.
I don't know why we as Americans feel guilty that we don't follow soccer like they do in Europe. It's okay for it to be a secondary sport here. I've tried to learn to like it a little bit. I'm not there yet, but it's okay. We don't have to. It doesn't have to be our passion, But it's a great game. But it's okay. It ranks where it ranks, and it's okay. It's a good thing. It's going to get bigger because kids are playing it now. I didn't play it as a kid. I played baseball and basketball and football. The kids are playing it now. But, great point, Jeremy.
All right. Well, what's your final thoughts this week?
Well, I'm gonna fan through three things real quick. None of them are great big things, but just three little things that I want to say. If I can read my own notes here. One thing I'll say about Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine and even Randy Johnson and hopefully John Smoltz, who should be going to the Hall of Fame soon, is when you look at their numbers, folks, look at them in the right vein. They did what they did during the steroid era. They did what they did when Brady Anderson was hitting 50 home runs. They did what they did when Mark McGwire was hitting 70 and Sosa was hitting 66. They did what they did in an era where pitching didn't exist. So, look at what they did in comparison to what the average pitcher did during that. And, if you were a pitcher in the 90s and your ERA was 4.5, you made the All-Star team. These were guys throwing up ERAs in the low 2s, high 1s. So I want to say that. And the other thing I want to say, one of the first guys that I ever collected in my life was Carl Yastrzemski for the Boston Red Sox. And Yaz came out, pretty bold statement. He said that he thought David Ortiz was the second best hitter in the history of the Red Sox behind Ted Williams. I like Poppy, I do, but Yaz, don't sell yourself short, buddy. You look at Yaz's numbers are comparable to Stan Musial's. People don't realize that. Carl Yastrzemski was one of the greatest players of all time. And to say that, and I'm not even sure Poppy was the third best hitter because I'm not sure he was a better hitter than Manny Ramirez. Just in that. Also, welcome Byron Scott back to the Lakers. Diehard Laker fan here. We're glad to have you back. You got your work cut out for you, but you should have been the head coach when Mike Williams got the job. Or Mike Anderson, whatever the hell his name was. I don't even remember now. Welcome back, Byron. Huh?
Mike Brown?
Huh? Mike who?
Mike Brown?
Mike Brown, yeah, I don't care. Whatever. Should have been Byron Scott back then. Welcome to L.A., Byron. You deserve to be here, buddy. You're in L.A. Great. All right, Jeremy, winding it down. Any shout-outs to anybody out there?
You know what? Just for everyone that's watching, I just want to give a shout-out to them. It's just a pleasure for anyone to tune in and view just me and you, two couple regular guys, pretty handsome guys.
A couple? I don't know about that.
Okay, well, one handsome guy and one decent old guy talking about sports. So just shout out to everyone out there, of course. Friends and family, but definitely just anyone that wants to tune in.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Like I said, email us, bncsportscardfactory@gmail.com. If we get enough emails and you guys can motivate me, I'll open up our own email for this. But for now, we're going to operate off the one you guys all have at hand. My shout-outs are a little more personal. First of all, I want to give a shout-out to my dad, who his birthday is the 31st of this month. It'll be Thursday. He turns, what will he be, 63 years old. Happy birthday there, Tomcat. Second shout-out is to my wife, Christy. Christy's birthday is tomorrow. I will not tell you how old she's going to be because I feel like she is within earshot or may see this.
24.
She's going to be something years young. Happy birthday, sweetie. I love you very much. Thank you again to everybody who's watching this, playing along. We appreciate it very much. Check us out. If you guys have anything you want us to talk about, email us, shoot us a line. You can come in here if you break in live. We've got a little chat. You can come in here and chat with us live also. Remember, too, guys, always, this is something that somebody told me a long time ago, never take your joy in somebody else's misery. Try to do stuff that makes you happy. That's what we're doing here. We're doing this stuff because it makes us happy. If you don't like it, tell us you don't like us. Tell you don't like what we're saying. Don't hate, though, man. There's too much of it going around.
That's a great way to say it. Guys, we do this because we love it. And if you love it, let us know. If not, just don't get negative. There's exactly what Brian said. There's just too much of that going around. Let's keep it friendly. And hey, guys, we're doing this for you, and I hope you enjoy it.
All right, man. Jeremy, I'm out.